Okay, shall we get started or wait a few more minutes in case somebody else joins in?
Um, I think it would be okay to start with the script part that we
Okay,
open. Yes.
all right. So, um, let me just start. Want to welcome to the August meeting of the Equity Advisory Committee. And I want to acknowledge that COVID-19 is causing us to alter our usual procedures. And we have invited residents of the region to participate in this meeting virtually. As we know, Governor Walz has declared a peacetime emergency in response to COVID-19, and the Met Council has determined that it's not practical or prudent to conduct in-person committee meetings for reasons stated in the Governor's emergency executive order. Accordingly, the Met Council members will participate in this meeting by phone or other electronic means, and this Equity Advisory Committee meeting will be conducted under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. The Council has determined that it will be doing virtual meetings at least until October 30th of this year. Before we call this meeting to order, a few quick reminders and guidelines about WebEx and the virtual meeting process. And these are the rules of conducting the conversations here online. You will remain muted unless speaking. If on phone and computer, only unmute one device when speaking. Please announce your name before speaking. All votes are conducted by roll call. Communicate with each other only through speaking. Only use the chat function to address technical difficulties such as you can hear or be heard or that you have a question. And you can type your question in the chat, but avoid having conversations for transparency purposes. Use the raise hand feature if you wish to speak. If that doesn't work, type in the chat, I have a question. Uh, and for your information, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available online. Irina will be monitoring the chat. Reach out to her if you are having technical issues, and she will put her phone number in the chat. So at this time, I call to order the meeting of Tuesday, August 17 at 6:07 p.m. Irina, will you do the roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, co-chair and council members. So when I call your name, will you please let me know if you are here? Lenice Block, Nicole Ellis McGregor, Leah Goldstein Moses,
Here.
Francisco Gonzalez,
Here.
Nicholas Jenkins, Chai Lee,
Here.
Michael Luceni, Julia Miller.
Michael is here. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. T. Wei, Brianne Rothstein, Sarah Rudolph, Mohammed Sheikh, Nalima Sitate Munene, Philip Sterner, Anita Irvina Davis.
Here.
Thank you all.
Do we have a quorum?
We do not.
Okay. We will be monitoring to see if folks join in late, and then we might need to come back and approve the minutes. That we cannot do that because we don't have a quorum at this time. So there might be a switch, might be some um, change to the agenda again if we have a quorum as we go forward tonight. So let me move forward to the next step, which is to the next item on the agenda, which is the public invitation. Oh, I think Leah's going to do this part. Okay, go ahead, Leah.
All right, thank you so much, Councilmember Gonzalez. We have now started taking public comments again. And as a reminder, if you wish to offer a public comment at a virtual meeting, please pre-register by emailing public.info@metc.state.min.us. I will put that email address in the chat as well. And you can also send your comments by email. We do not have any people who have pre-registered to speak today, so thank you. Put that in the chat. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about our EAC nominations and vacancies. So we have, as part of our nominations and vacancies process, we have we open up our application through a formal portal, and that application process is likely to open up in September of this year, with applications coming in October, review and interviews in November. And then we will be forwarding our recommendations of new members to the council for approval in December, with new terms beginning in January. In this cycle, we have several vacancies that need to be filled. There's a blend of people whose terms are ending. There's some seats that are currently vacant because people have stepped away from their service. And if you are someone whose term is ending and you'd like to continue serving, we really encourage you to reapply and resubmit your application. Many thanks go to Anita, Michael, and T, who have agreed to serve as our nominations committee, which means that they'll be working with Councilmember Gonzalez and myself and possibly one other council member to review applications, do an initial scoring of applications to see, to confirm who we will be interviewing, and then sit in on the interviewing process. So thank you very much. I know Michael and Anita are here this evening, so thank you for agreeing to serve in that way. Because we do have quite a few vacancies, I thought it would be helpful if we spent a few minutes brainstorming places where we might want to recruit new members, where we might want to invite members, and any other things that people would like to contribute to ensure that we have a strong applicant pool as we go into our review process. So I'll just open it up for comment at this point. What ideas do people have about the recruiting and where we might post and share information, or how we might invite people to apply?
Sorry. If I might just state briefly that we have members by district and also at large. So there might be opportunities for folks who live in a district in which we already have, if you don't want to apply for your district's representation, then you can do it at large, which will mean that covers the whole region. So there are multiple opportunities for folks to apply as a district or as at large position.
Hi, this is Brianne. Sorry if my connection's bad, but I was just going to suggest that the people who applied the last round, if you did interviews and there were good applicants, if you could, go back out to them and suggest that they reapply. That's worked well in the past for me. So that's just a suggestion to tap into that pool of previous applicants.
Okay.
Anita, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. What's been helpful to me is an email with all the specifics and the districts, because a lot of the organizations that I work with, they send it to individuals that I know might be interested, or ask them to share that with people they think might be interested. And so there's a big connection through email. But I was also going to say to go back to some of the former applicants and ask them if they're still interested.
Anita, can I just confirm that what I'm understanding? Are you suggesting that we have an email that has all the information available in it, so it's very easy to forward and disseminate? So it's already kind of like a template you can just forward on to people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If it comes from the chairs to us, the membership here, and then we can forward it on. To me, I think it goes faster than waiting till I have another meeting someplace and then mention it in some of the, at the end of the meeting. Oh, by the way.
Great. Any other reflections about what would be helpful for recruiting new members?
We can just mention um, the high pay um, and the convenience of working just 1 hour a month or whatever.
I do like the idea of sharing some things that would attract people. So I don't know for those members that are on the call, if there's some things that attracted you to the committee that you think would be helpful to share with others that we could include in that email or our posting. Does that raise any thoughts for you?
Uh, Leah, you mean like a short sentence of I enjoyed being at the EAC because A, B, and C or something
Yeah,
like that? Okay.
exactly. Yeah. Does anything come to mind for anybody already?
Perhaps tidbits from the work plan, like a couple of examples of upcoming work that one or two of the committees are intending to influence in the future.
Great. Well, we will not start our recruitment until close to our next meeting time. So you don't have to be ready for it right this moment, but if you have other ideas about ways or places we can recruit, please do let me know. And I've jotted down some of the things that we talked about so far. So thank you, everybody. And now we are going to move on to subcommittee updates. And I connected with subcommittee members before tonight's meeting about giving a little bit of a consistent format for our reports back to the EAC as a whole. This will be a new format for us moving forward, so we're just going to pilot it a little bit this evening. And tonight, I don't think we have any members of our transportation committee here, so we will only be getting updates from our operations and our affordable housing subcommittees. So what we will be asking our subcommittees to do is to share a brief update about what they've worked on, raise any items for discussion for the whole EAC, which we can make a little bit of space for this evening, or we can note for a future agenda. And then if there are any requests for the EAC, such as new members needed or introductions to a specific group or things like that, we will ask for those as well. So I would like to ask our Affordable Housing Subcommittee to give their report first.
Thank you, Leah. This is Brianne. So I was appointed the subcommittee chair during during the last housing subcommittee meeting, and the housing subcommittee currently consists of Michael, Nalima, and Edward, and I believe. I might be missing one person. I apologize. And the progress since the last meeting is that we had scheduled a meeting with Tara Beard and Lisa Barajas from Community Development to talk about housing and particularly the housing policy plan. And I missed that meeting, but I do know that Nalima and Michael were in attendance. So I think Michael on the call? Perhaps
Yeah, I'm
Michael
on the
can.
call.
Okay, perhaps you could provide a quick update on the results of that discussion or how that discussion went.
Yeah, I don't have my notes with me that I took for that meeting.
Okay, that's fine. I put you on the spot. I apologize for that.
That's all right.
But yeah, unfortunately, only 2 of the subcommittee members were able to attend. So we're definitely gonna reschedule that with staff. And again, the main focus of our work plan is the housing policy plan update, which is good timing because they haven't started it yet. So really just looking for a schedule from staff as to what their schedule is for the update and looking for ideas from them on how they feel we can plug in. And then of course, um, you know, giving our opinions on how we feel like we can plug in. So that's all I have, unless Michael, you have anything else you'd like to add. I don't think Nalima or Edward are on the call at this time. If they are, then if you have anything to add, that would be great. And then Leo, we don't have any action item requests for the EAC at this point, but we do very much intend to get plugged into the housing policy plan. And so I actually think over the next 6 to 8 months, we'll have a lot. And so if there are any other people on the call who are interested in the housing subcommittee, the time to really influence the housing policy plan, which is the Met Council's regional policy plan, and actually affects a lot more than just housing. It affects a lot of the land use policy as well. Now's the time to join. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianne. And I will give the update from our operations subcommittee and then see if any of my co-members have anything else to add. I am the chair of the operations subcommittee, and on the committee, Michael serves on that one as well, as does Edward, and so does Muhammad. And at our most recent meeting, we worked on looking at the new program and priorities for a new hire in the EEO unit that is going to be working and focusing on bringing more businesses to the council and strategies for accessing using purchasing to bring more businesses to the council that are owned by people of color and other protected groups. We brainstormed some strategies at our most recent meeting for a new fund that's being established for that work. We do not have anything for discussion for the full EAC currently, although the two domains that we are focused on in that subcommittee are the employment experience, so everything from hiring to retaining to advancing candidates within the Met Council and looking at the outcomes and whether those outcomes are equitable. And then looking at purchasing through professional technical services and other purchasing vehicles. And so later on today, we will be hearing from the equity manager at Metro Transit, which is related. We will likely have some agenda items within a few months, specifically related to the purchasing and that new program that we brainstormed about. So, but we don't have any at this time. And also, if you are interested in joining our committee, we would love to have additional members as well. We have a regular standing meeting on the first Tuesday of every month, and we would be flexible with the time if that time does not work for any of you. Thank you. And I don't believe we have any transportation subcommittee members here today, but I will pause to make sure that that is true. All right, with that, I'm going to move into our next agenda item, which is to introduce Selena Martina, the new Metro Transit Senior Equity Manager. As everybody on this call knows, there is a lot of equity work happening at the council. A couple of months ago, we were introduced to the Metro Transit's Equity Change team. And we've also been in discussion in the background with the other equity change teams about potentially bringing them to one of our upcoming meetings. We now have Selena Martina, who is very new as the equity manager in Metro Transit. And she's here to introduce herself, and then we can have a little bit discussion about ways that we can collaborate to really make her work successful. So Selena, I'm going to turn it over to you for an introduction.
Thank you, Co-Chair Leah. Good evening, everyone. Councilmember Gonzalez, it's so good to see you. And good evening, buenas tardes to all the committee members. I am Selena Martina. I'm the new Senior Manager for Transit Equity at Metro Transit. And I would like to take a few minutes of your agenda to introduce myself to the committee, and also thank you for your time, dedication, and work in partnership with Met Council. A little bit about me. I know that Principal Luceni also knows me, so I see some familiar faces here. It's so nice to see you, Principal Luceni. So I recently held the Executive Director of Engagement and External Relations position with Minneapolis Public Schools, where I led all the community engagement and the family engagement efforts for the district. In 2017, 2018, I was the Metropolitan Council's first Parks Ambassador, working for the Community Development Regional Parks Unit. So I was really blessed to have that role and start that program. I also participated and led several equity actions and tasks when I worked for the Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board. And I really do hope that I can bring my experiences and knowledge of equity assessments of policies, decision-making, procedures, and practice for different institutions to Metro Transit. I'm reading, so I don't, so I take full advantage of the time that you have given me. So I'm sorry if I look down. part of the Metro Transit equity work, and thank you for acknowledging, Co-Chair Leah, that you had a presentation of the amazing team I work with, although we have 2 assigned team members to the equity unit. There is a much larger team of cross-functional employees that work in the equity and inclusion team for Metro Transit. So really the work is to support Metro Transit to develop, articulate, and ultimately achieve a shared vision for transit equity. I think that, you know, my role will be key in helping Metro Transit define what transit equity is, so we can move forward with the subsequent goals and have a shared understanding of what we mean when we say transit equity. And again, complement and build upon the great work that has been started by the equity and inclusion team from Metro Transit, and support the initiatives that are led, you know, that have been led for now, I think, over a year. Sarah Barris and Rachel Cagle are both my team members in the equity unit. I also do hope in my new role to lead and support the core element 1 of the strategic framework of advancing equity internally and throughout the region. Partner with the numerous Metro Transit department-led equity efforts that are already in progress, and working closely with the Office of Equal Opportunity as they also hire equity staff for the whole agency. I really see the work of the equity and inclusion team at Metro Transit as a partnership work with, that is shared with this committee, with your committee. And the Equity Advisory Committee serves as a consulting board to the Metro Transit work, such as, you know, I see collaborating on strengthening the relationship with the Transportation Equity Advisory Committee subcommittee. I know that member T and Sarah are both part of the subcommittee, and look forward to strengthening that relationship, to developing transit equity statement and vision, and really have a shared understanding of the transit equity, like I mentioned before. So consult with your committee on that. Developing transit equity metrics and assessment tools and evaluation, as well as progress monitor that work, and you know, continue to fostering a workplace that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive, such as, you know, continuing with our training, train the trainers, and furthering the work of the intercultural development inventory work. And I look forward to partnering with you all on this work, and to consult with you on some of these important goals that we have in mind. So thank you very much for your time in the agenda. I know that today's agenda is packed. You have a presentation that is coming up after me that is very interesting and deep in the Blue Line engagement. So of course, if you have questions for me, you know, I'm here, but thank you again. Looking forward to the work and the collaborative work.
Selena, thank you so much for being with us this evening. And I think I'll open it up for my colleagues. Does anyone have any questions or ideas about collaboration that you'd like to share?
This is Chari. I just want to say welcome back to the council, Selena. And if there's any way that we could support you, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know as you get into this work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Selena, just a quick question. How many staff are on your team?
So thank you, Council Member Gonzalez. I currently have 2 direct reports, Sarah Barris and Rachel Cagle. I think Sarah came to your meeting a couple months ago to present along with a member of our equity and inclusion team. So 2 and me 3. But again, we have a very robust, and I will not be able to give you the exact number of members of that are representing other units within Metro Transit that are part of our ongoing equity work, and it's kind of the equity change team. I know that in other parts of the Met Council, they are called equity change team. I was part of the equity change team when I was in community development, but at Metro Transit, we have a very robust and representative group of individuals in the equity and inclusion team. Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you.
Mentioned this already, but were these existing positions or are they fairly new positions to Metro Transit? And I apologize if you already mentioned it and I missed that.
The equity specialist, Co-Chair Leah?
Your position and then the two that report to you.
Thank you. And I don't think the positions were new. There was a prior manager of equity manager at Metro Transit, although the position evolved into a senior manager, the role I'm taking right now, based on the priorities and the new strategic direction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I greatly appreciate you coming and introducing yourself to us, and it's lovely to hear about the prior work and connections you have within the council and in the broader community. And thank you in particular for mentioning the desire to continue to collaborate with our transportation subcommittee, Sarah and T. I know they've really appreciated the opportunity to build relationships and think about ideas where we can be supporting that work. So thank you so much.
Okay, we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, which is good. So we have plenty of time to still discuss and share ideas on everything that has been presented here so far. So next on the agenda, we would like to welcome back Sam O'Connell, who's the Assistant Director of Metro Transit Community Relations, to give us an update on BLRT engagement. Welcome back, Sam.
Well, thank you, co-chair, and thank you, co-chairs, and happy to be here with the committee. I always love following Selena. She's just so fun to listen to, and her excitement and passion. So I hope that folks get an opportunity to work with her. We get to work with her, and she just brings so much value to our work. So thank you again for having me here, and I am so happy to share with you a bit of a project update on where we are on the Blue Line extension. So we do have a slide presentation. I believe that went out with your packet, and then we'll just be speaking to the slides that are on the screen tonight as well. For those of you, I do have my camera on, so if you don't see me, feel free to scroll through and you can see me presenting. But just a little background of myself. I have been with the council since 2012. I started out as the engagement manager on the Southwest LRT project office. Prior to that, I was with Dakota County, and prior to that, consulted for a couple of years, and then really right out of college, started working with MnDOT for 10 years. I know, it's impossible to think, that I'm only 22 and how did I get all of that done? But I've really enjoyed my time here at working at Metro Transit. And in 2015, we started up the Blue Line extension. So just very happy to share where we are There has been a lot that's been done, so I'll provide that project update to you this evening. I will be covering a bit about our 2021 engagement overview and some of the takeaways that we've been hearing. A lot of the work that this committee does, obviously, is trying to improve our processes and making sure that we are connecting with community members. So hopefully you will see yourself in this work. I think you will also see yourself in the anti-displacement work that we are doing as part of our project as well. I'll just talk at a real high level, kind of where we are with some of the routes that we are looking at, and happy to come back at another time to dig into that a little bit deeper with you. And then also just share with you how we're going to go about and do our work and really look for community supported alignment. And then I'm happy to be here for any discussion you'd like to have, and we can talk about next steps. So if that works, we'll go ahead and Irina is going to run slides for me today. So thank you so much, Irina. And we'll just go ahead and move into the next slide, slide 4. And where we're talking about our project transition. So I think a lot of folks have been involved with our project. I know Brianne has in kind of her professional setting, as well as Nalima as well, in terms of the work that she does. And actually was just at an event with her that ACER hosted on Saturday to talk about the Blue Line extension at Becker Park in the city of Crystal. So a lot of folks do have a good connection with the Blue Line extension. Just to share, and maybe Irina, maybe if you can bump down just a little bit in your bar there so folks can see the full corridor. Thank you for doing that. So I'll just start from the top just to get folks oriented to the Blue Line extension as we were working on the project up until basically last year. So we start out in the city of Brooklyn Park, and we're primarily on West Broadway. And then we transition kind of overhead through a bridge, and we find ourselves in kind of 81, but we are not in the middle of 81. Before, we were in the Burlington Northern Santa Fe alignment. That is the yellow line that you see on the slide here. And that represents 8 miles of the original corridor. And then as we travel through Crystal and Robbinsdale and we come into Golden Valley, we actually pop out of that corridor and we head east on Olson Memorial Highway to connect into the existing Target Field Station. So, and then as an extension of the Blue Line, the trains would actually continue all the way down to the airport, to the Mall of America. So basically a 1-seat ride from just north of 610 at the Target campus that you can get all the way down into Bloomington at the Mall of America. This is what we were planning. We were doing 90% designs. We had cleared all of our environmental work with the federal government. That was actually done in 2016. Kind of our last big piece that we needed to do was negotiate our existence, if you will, within the Burlington Northern Freight right-of-way. That corridor is about 100 feet wide, so we would be able to exist with our 2 tracks, as well as the existing freight tracks would be in there. They would needed to be shifted, but there was enough right-of-way that both of us could coexist. We tried for many years with all sorts of different levels of government to make that happen, and at the end, unfortunately, we were not able to find a solution where we could operate as well as have the Burlington Northern Santa Fe operate as well. So given that this is their property, we cannot force ourselves onto their property. The project decided it needed to take a turn. So that happened in August of 2020, that the council, in partnership with Hennepin County, decided that we needed to do something different. These are deserving cities and communities and residents and businesses that have been waiting so long for a transit investment like light rail, that the need was there, and we wanted to continue to serve that need. So last year, we decided that we are going to take a different look at this corridor and see how we can still connect our communities as best as we can. So that is where we are today, kind of moving through that process, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about, since August 2020, kind of where have we been. So the next slide, please. So again, Arena, if you don't mind, thank you so much for that. So just to kind of give folks some of those big mileposts that we have experienced on the project is last August, so almost a year ago now, that is when we made our joint announcement that we do need to connect our communities, but we're going to have to maybe think about how we do that in a slightly different way. So for prior to that, we were kind of really quiet, sort of just really focused on getting our design done and working out a solution with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe. So we had a lot of our communities just waiting and waiting and waiting. So after our announcement, we knew we needed to reconvene our advisory committees. So we have a community advisory committee, we have a business advisory committee, and we also have a corridor management committee that's mostly made up with policymakers along the corridor. In addition to that, Hennepin County, being our partner, contracted with some local community organizations to help us kind of dig in a little bit more on engagement. Just we were dormant for a couple of years, and we really needed to reconnect with the community. And as you all know very intimately, our community has been in crisis, and as well as with the pandemic. So we really found the need and the resourcefulness of working with community organizations to help us reconnect to be beneficial. So much so that we brought that into the project all the way through today. So in March, after doing some initial community engagement, really understanding sort of the needs and the desires of our community members, we released initial route modifications for light rail transit, particularly for our community of Minneapolis, where we are right now looking at potentially 2 route options that would connect from 81 basically into Target Field and allow us to serve either a West Broadway alignment or a Lowry alignment, and I'll get into that in a little later. Like I said, we are continuing to work with community organizations to help support the community engagement with this. And what we have done with all of that work then in July was release initial station locations along the proposed alignments, and then also be able to dig in a little deeper and share with community members what the LRT alignment could look like along 81, West Broadway, and Lowry as well. So July and August has been really focused on meeting in person where folks are. So we've been out to a lot of our places of worship, our educational facilities, our neighborhoods as well, kind of the community events, in addition to hosting our own in-person open houses as well as virtual. So that's kind of where we are in this last year of work for the project. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to provide an overview of where we are with community engagement and kind of how we're approaching it and how this has been very different from our previous LRT projects. So right now, Hennepin County, through a Hennepin County contract, there are 14 community organizations that have really worked very closely with a lot of community members in the corridor to help raise their voices and bring them into some of the processes and work that we're doing. So their work, actually, they're in the middle of a 10-month contract, and we would hope that this work continues as the project moves forward. Some of the areas we did break up because some of the community groups had more of an interest in focusing, say, in the northern area or in the middle of the corridor, or they have more connections within Minneapolis, and we're very interested in continuing that work. So we do have organizations, if we go to the next slide, that do have that focus area. So I just wanted to share on this slide some of the organizations that we're working with, again, under contract through Hennepin County to help us lift up the community's voice into our processes. So some are helping us amplify, some are also just hosting their own meetings where we share kind of project information, and then they lead and facilitate a lot of the discussions. They help do survey work. They bring that information back into the project as well. So we have everything from neighborhood associations to our Laotian Assistance Center, Librarian Business Association, some of our business focus groups like the West Broadway Business Coalition, also helping us with this work. To the next slide, please. So just to give you a sense of what that work looks like, again, we've been hosting our advisory committee meetings. We have community meetings. Again, this includes both our in-person as well as our virtual. We were doing a lot of community and business stakeholder check-ins, and that literally is kind of knocking on doors and just making sure that we're relevant and folks feel that they have been engaged and heard through this process. We've also introduced a couple of different new tools, again, during the pandemic when we weren't really meeting in person. We wanted to give folks an opportunity to still share their thoughts. So on our project website, we have an interactive map that folks can go ahead and just comment right on the map if they're like, I think this would be a great place for a station, or if this is an attraction and I think this is a destination. Folks are letting us know what that is, and that begins to help inform our technical work as we go forward. We did do a survey with our community members to just understand a little bit of what this line could do in terms of connecting them closer to communities, and we received over 2,000 responses. In that initial survey, we had about 2/3 of the survey participants favoring a little bit more of a West Broadway alignment, and 1/3 favoring a Lowry alignment. And of course, our team is available for just emails and taking those phone calls and making sure we're connecting with everybody as well. Next slide. So what are we hearing from folks? And this really aligns with some of the principles, both for our project and as well as our engagement, is that this has to be equitable. And we have to focus on anti-displacement early. I think as we look at some of our lessons learned, particularly with the Green Line and as we construct Southwest, is we want to ensure that the folks that we are planning and building these lines for stay in the corridor as well. That's whether they're residents or businesses. So there has been a strong push for our community members to say we need to talk about displacement, and we need to get the tools in the toolbox so we can address those issues early. Community members, whether it's West Broadway or Lowry or in Robbinsdale, have just said, we appreciate the high density. We understand that that's kind of where some of this is going, but we want our communities to be walkable, accessible, and we want to make sure we're safe when we do that as well. Not only just safe using the transit system, but also in our communities as well. And light rail can be used as a tool to help vision that and make sure it also happens. Clearly minimize disruption of existing traffic and neighborhood communities. Let's not disrupt the strong connections that exist today, but how can we use this project to actually maximize those opportunities and reinforce them? And really making sure we're connecting people to jobs, education, healthcare, facilities, groceries, and kind of just also the other regional destinations. So really making sure we're answering those life needs, and then also making sure that those destinations around the region are also available. Next slide, please. So some of the opportunities here with this realignment of the new alignments that we're taking a look at is that we have an opportunity by going through Minneapolis to actually serve more communities of color and lower income, or that have no or limited mobility access. So with the trade-offs is that we are hearing from community members that the new alignments really have that opportunity. I would also say that one of the weaknesses of the previous alignment is that we did not connect into North Memorial Hospital, where we now have that opportunity on either a Lowry or a West Broadway option. There are opportunities, as folks have seen, some of the development occurring along the green line that have occurred on the blue line is that there's an opportunity for businesses and economic development that are more respective of the communities that they're in. And we want to, again, ensure that those visions are realized through a project like this. Those that live there, those that work there, those that have open businesses should really benefit from this line first and foremost. The opportunity is to also improve the transit experience by having a dedicated light rail line that is serving our community members. And we're also hearing very much is that this is an opportunity to help us address climate change goals through an investment like this as well. I would share with you that we've also heard concerns, and that is not unusual. And I just wanted to highlight a few of those for you on the next slide. As we're in community and as we're hearing, and that there's always the sentence of I support light rail, but. So what is that but? What are we hearing from community members? And again, it is about the gentrification that might occur with a light rail project like this and its displacement, right? So again, those folks that are renting, particularly right now, whether it's residential or business, that they would be displaced, that they wouldn't be able to actually stay in the communities that have raised them or where they are raising their families right now. So we want to ensure that anything that we do is out in front and talking about that and really bringing all of our resources, whether it's at the council or the county and the city and kind of state resources to help us address that as well. Again, the negative disruptions that sometimes occur with construction, try to minimize that as best as we can. How do we keep businesses open? We have one model that we used on the green line on University Avenue. We know that there's more ways that we can be creative and really think about that ahead of time and get businesses involved. And again, the stations are pretty key. Stations are a culmination of a lot of desires for communities. That's where they have access. Stations themselves represent the community. So we want them to be safe. We want them to be taken care of and make sure that they're easy to connect to. So again, a concern that we're hearing from some of our community members, but things that we feel like we can address through our process. So the next slide really shows kind of how do we take all of that collective information in and show how input makes a difference, quite frankly, in the work that we do. So I talked a little bit about one of our tools that we have, and what we did is the maps that folks showed us and pointed to and shared with us. We just kind of took all of that information in their online map and we said, well, where are folks thinking stations should be located? So on the left, you will see along the alignment coming out of Brooklyn Park and on 81. So the black line represents 81. The yellow line that you see there is the previous alignment along the railroad corridor. You can see pretty much where we had stations is very close to where folks are also thinking that we should have stations again. So just kind of confirming that, yeah, those made sense in terms of their east-west ability to make connections, as well as we look at serving Brooklyn Center and New Hope with some of our transit connections, but then also bringing folks into the main line as well. As we looked at the new routes on the map on the right-hand side, either the orange line, which is the north line of the Lowry route, going across eastbound and then coming down Washington and then connecting into downtown, or the green route in terms of West Broadway, and then kind of making any number of possibilities of connecting into Target Field. Again, those stations replicate where those destinations are and where we have other investments going in the C and D line, our ABRT services as well. So that is how we bring that information in and provide that and use that as a basis for a lot of our technical work. Co-chairs, would you like me to stop and see if there's any questions, or would you like me to keep going on some of the other elements of the project?
We have plenty of time, so we can entertain questions now or wait until the end. Um, Leah, any suggestions?
Why don't we take a couple questions at this point so far, and then we can move into the rest of the presentation.
Okay. Well, let me jump in, get the ball rolling. Sam, do you have any information about the demographics along the new proposed routes, and how did they differ or are different from the original route through the using the railroad track?
Yes, Chair, thank you for that question. We do have the demographic information. I can provide that in greater detail as a follow-up to this presentation. But generally speaking, we are able to, with the new alignments, definitely serve more people of color. In particularly, so our BIPOC community members are served better either with a Lowry or a West Broadway alignment as we're hitting more destinations and more residential and business areas versus the other alignment. Once we were in that rail corridor, we're kind of like we were in that rail corridor, so it's actually hard. It was harder to serve direct neighborhoods when we were in that rail corridor. And just for folks as a reminder, the original alignment had us going down Olson Memorial Highway, which we definitely were connecting with some very strong communities. For example, Heritage Park and Harrison neighborhood. But once we kind of dropped into that rail corridor, we were almost a little bit invisible. So it was really hard for us to connect to some of those communities until we get to those stations. And that corridor again ran through Golden Valley and then connected into Robbinsdale and Crystal. So as part of our analysis to help decision makers and our communities, we will be teasing that information out a little bit more in terms of the population served and also characteristics of that population, like how many folks are need to be served by transit because they have zero vehicles available at their households, for example. And then also what communities have a higher percentage of rent burden in terms of this as well. So a lot of that information will be coming into our project, into the analysis as well.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know.
Mhm.
Sam, hi, this is Brianne. My question is, has there been any specific anti-displacement strategies or efforts that you have heard in community and or anywhere else to date?
Yeah, well, thank you, Brianne, and thank you for that question. And actually, that leads us maybe really nicely into our slide 15, and we'll talk a little bit about that anti-displacement work. So as Brianne shared with you, anti-displacement work does exist. We know that there are community members like, for example, the Blue Line Coalition in particular, that have really worked on developing scorecards for our cities to say before a development is proposed, let's make sure that it's meeting the goals of our community members. Let's make sure that it helps move the needle on equity. So there are some communities that are using that scorecard as well. But as we look at this as a corridor that's connecting multiple communities, we need to have a consistent approach to that. So that is why, as part of our work, we are working on anti-displacement. And part of that process is helping us inform or bring that information as we continue to do our work, but understand that regardless if we're on West Broadway or Lowry, there will be this concerns about gentrification and displacement. So we want to work and start getting that group pulled together. So we have released a RFP and we received proposals, and Hennepin County led that that RFP process. Myself, including representatives from the city of Minneapolis and Hennepin County, and we also had representatives from our business and advisory committees to review the proposals. Our hope is we can introduce that contractor to our advisory committees. And really what that contractor is going to be doing is help us facilitate that discussion with an anti-displacement working group and really bringing those best practices that exist today, and also taking a look at best practices around the nation and seeing what we can do again at all levels. We know that as a agency that we couldn't represent that work completely and authentically, so we received quite the consent and consensus from our community groups is like, that's right, you shouldn't probably be leading this work, but go out and find a contractor that is steeped in this information, that really does work at the community level, that has the experience of doing this work both locally and can also tap into national experience to help lead it. We understand that sometimes we bring baggage, and I think that was a very fair assessment to hear, not only from the council, but for Hennepin County. So we also don't have a city leading this. So this facilitator will help work with this anti-displacement working group, which the working group would have representatives from the state that works in affordable housing, that we would have developers, as they definitely are part of the solution as well. And again, the council, Hennepin County, the cities, and also community members to help us with this anti-displacement issue. We think this is one of the first times that this issue has been brought in so early in a large scale project, and we're really excited about it. There's also interest from the Federal Transit Administration and the work that we're doing to help support and maybe bring this nationally as well. So we're hopeful that this work is going to be meaningful to our communities that we're serving, but also really respects from what we're hearing from community members to say that we want to be part of the success and we don't want to be displaced on that. So we understand there are some efforts that are in place, and we want to be able to bring all of that to the table and then push that needle a little bit further. Brianne, did that answer your question? I just want to make sure I got that covered.
Yeah, thank you. So you've got a contractor working on it. Did you select that contractor already?
We have selected, and right now they're just going through the Hennepin County contracting process. So as soon as we are able to, we will be announcing who that contractor is. Yes. Just wanted to make sure in case anybody else has any comments or thoughts about the anti-displacement work before we continue. All right, well, if it's okay by the co-chairs, I'll just go ahead and begin to talk a little bit about how we are developing some of the route modifications. And Irina, thank you. If you can just go to that slide. Thank you very much. So the map that you see really reflects what we're looking at in terms of our scope for route refinement here. So the 4 stations that you see on the northern part of the corridor, those are stations in Brooklyn Park, and they are not moving. They were not in the rail corridor to begin with, and so we are confirming with community members and policymakers, yes, that these still retain the benefits of having these stations up there, and that a lot of the work that the city has done to really enhance that corridor and really being creative of new residential and thinking for the future for mixed use, and then also attracting a good number of businesses to that corridor. So that corridor makes a lot of sense to continue to stay that way. As we do that little hook from the blue to the black, and that's the 81 corridor. So that is Botno Boulevard, County Road 81. And again, we're confirming that those stations make sense. And what we're really making sure is that all the alignment options, especially as we look into Minneapolis, is that they are they support the adopted project principles, that we have the right of way, that we can get in there, that we also have, it makes sense operationally. It's not moving too fast, but it's not moving too slow. And that basically it's bringing in some of the work that we've done with the previous alignment to kind of respect that work. And then really also just making sure that this is 110% supported by our community and stakeholder input. Our goal is to get to a community supported alignment. So how are we doing that to help our community members understand a little bit of what that looks like? I just want to show some images with you tonight, kind of share with you tonight of how we're doing that. So if we go to the next slide, we'll show some of the visualizations that we've developed. I just pulled up the West Broadway slides to just share with you an example of what we're looking at. So folks know where we are. We're on West Broadway, and if you know that's really cool skateboard park, we're right there. So we have in the picture on the right upper hand corner, you can see what it looks like today. The actual image that you're seeing is replicating those existing conditions. So we have 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. We have parking, we have the sidewalks in there as well, and then you can see the commercial area of the community. If we look at what center running LRT looks like in the next slide, you can see how that changes up. And we will share with you that with particularly of our West Broadway options, in order to get light rail in, we can continue to have traffic moving both on both sides, but we'll need that space that's currently allocated to some of the parking to get the alignment through. So as we've had these discussions with our community members, we talk a little bit about that. Well, where do folks park? Well, we have some experience on that on Central Corridor where we have shared parking, we have district parking, we have parking on the side streets that makes sense. And so that is part of our toolbox of how we can address some of the parking. But again, some of the visualizations that we're sharing is to start those conversations and really understand from communities, from their perspectives of how this can be both beneficial, but also impactful in what we need to do to kind of move forward in the conversation. So this is what center running looks like. If we were to go to the next visualization, you would see what side running LRT looks like. This one does tend to be a little bit more impactful for our communities because you are closing off more driveways in a side running configuration versus the middle, because again, the train is kind of moving with traffic, and where this is, you need to cut off a little bit of some of that access to keep the train kind of moving and ensure safety, particularly folks that are making turning movements through here as well. But again, our community members said, what does it look like on side running? And this allows us to have our conversations with the communities about that as well. I would also add the next visualization that you would see is also coming from community members to understand what would light rail look like if it was elevated. So again, showing a little bit about what that looks like. We're still impacting the traffic below because we do have significant piers that would need to support structure. So you would see the 2 tracks being supported. Where you see the white framing on each sides of the guideway there, that's what it would look like if a station was put in there. So it'd be an elevated station. So we would need additional space. So if you thought about kind of just pushing out to the edges of those white frames, that's what it would look like. But again, this is something that helps us with our conversations with community members and how they're understanding to make these trade-offs. Well, is this something that I would like in my community because I feel then traffic would move better, or is this something that I want in my community or don't want in my community because I feel like maybe this is not what I want my community to look like. These are the conversations that we're having with our residents and businesses right now as we go out. So moving to the next slide, just wanted to share real quickly, again, a little closer at where potential stations could look like. So again, mirroring very much the work that we have done before. And as we get to Lowry and West Broadway, we still want to maintain half a mile to 1 mile spacing. We want to have those stations that are key to our destinations and also provide really good connections. So you see our C and D lines on here as well, and really respects the community input. So as we look at potential station locations, this is up to this point what we've been hearing from community members that is making sense for us to have stations along the corridor. I won't go into great detail as you also have these slides in your packet, but if you are interested, we have shared with you the Brooklyn Park, the Crystal and Robbinsdale, and a little greater area of what those proposed station areas look like. Rena, if we could go to slide 25, I just want to hit on a really key piece too as we look at some of our Minneapolis options. So as we talked about Lowry and West Broadway, there are a myriad of possibilities from either alignment of connecting into downtown Minneapolis, again at the Target Field Station. The multiple lines that you see in the corner there represent some of those ways that we can connect. Some of it we have to go over I-94, some of it we can be on the side of I-94, some of it we can be going up Lindale. So there's many ways of us getting to there right now, but we know that this will take a little bit more time and effort to kind of figure out what that mix is, and there's probably even an idea or two that's not on here, but as a starting point, this is what we wanted to share with community members and really get their preference on how to connect to either West Broadway or Lowry coming out of downtown. So I'll just finish it here real quickly. If we just move to slide 27, please, and talk a little bit about where we are and where we're going. So again, last August, we really needed to kind of make a turn and kind of reinvigorate our communities, our business communities, and begin to talk about how we can identify community-supported alignment. So we worked on our project principles. So even before we knew what the alignments would be, we wanted to make sure that they addressed the community's needs, that were also focused on such things as climate change and safety and the ability to create equity and move the needle in many of our communities. We took all of that information, we developed those initial routes. Folks shared some of what those thoughts were, and then now we're able to layer on potential station locations, as well as a little bit of what LRT would look like being hosted on any one of those alternatives as well. So where we are right now is kind of using our project goals and objectives is to develop some evaluation criteria. So when folks take a look at either a Lowry or a West Broadway option, they can say, well, how many folks are impacted? Who is being served by this? What's the cost, potential cost, kind of a cost range on some of this? And what are the traffic impacts? How many communities are we able to serve and connect to? And that's the matrix that we're working in and developing that evaluation criteria. Our hope is that by the end of the year and maybe most likely early next, is that we're able to find an alignment that will move through the project development process. This is a project that is seeking federal funding, so we do want to keep this project eligible. So we will have to review that alignment through an additional environmental process as well. That also could take a little bit of time. But what we're hoping to do, and we'll just drop down to the next slide, please, is that we will have sometime this fall a draft report that brings all of this information out together. It wouldn't have a recommendation because what we're trying to do is bring all of that technical work together and layer that in with what we've received for community feedback. Bring that out. Again, we would do heavy engagement and be in community, sharing that information, really receiving what the communities are saying and bring that in, and then ultimately develop a final report that would have a recommended route identified. And again, that would be out for public comment as well. So that is really the process that we're hoping to go through by the end of this year and early next. And then if we move to the next slide, this is sort of the beginning of a bit of a marathon. It's not, even when we have a community supported alignment, it's still going to take us some time to kind of get us through the process, both environmentally and the technical work that needs to be done. So we would have about 1.5 to 2 years for environmental review. Part of that process, each of the communities do have a process to kind of approve the station locations and the alignment through their communities as well. So we would do that as part of the work. Continue to engineer. So basically, again, our Brooklyn Park segment is about 90% engineered, and kind of everything south of that would have to be brought up to that same level of design and engineering. And then our hope is that we would be pursuing a full funding grant agreement with the Federal Transit Administration. You can start construction before that, but the hope is that kind of that half of the project costs, capital costs, would be provided by the Federal Transit Administration, and that would come. And then ultimately, if everything lines up nicely, we could potentially open in 2028. But that's again, you know, if we can predict everything and our crystal ball shows no challenges, that would be the hope, kind of the 2028. So I know I'd be happy to stand for more questions, but I just want to leave you with one more piece of information. As so many folks on the committee here are deeply engaged with other networks, we wanted to share with you the best ways to stay involved. So Irina, if we can go to that last slide. We do have a project website. That's where you're going to find all of our project news and our maps and our surveys. And also what I've shared with you tonight is what we're hearing from community members. Our business advisory committee, our community advisory committee, and our corridor management committee, all of the presentations and meeting minutes, you can watch them. They are recorded as well. So you can see how your representatives that represent you are talking about the project. We would ask you to sign up for our GovDelivery newsletters. That's a great way for us to stay in touch. So please let your networks know about that as well. And as always, our staff is available for questions. We're happy to go where you are. We actually enjoy it. We've just done a series of driveway conversations that have had anywhere between 5 and 25 people. We think that's the most incredible way to really connect with community members. And then please follow us on Twitter and Facebook too. And you can also see what other people say about the project as well. So you don't have to take my word for it. So with that, co-chairs, happy to stand for any questions or any discussion you'd like to have about the Blue Line extension.
Sam, I just want to thank you for this great presentation and all the information that you provided. So we're glad to have you here tonight and also for your involvement in this important project. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments? No.
Excuse me, this is Leah, and I will actually have to leave our meeting a little bit early, and Francisco's going to finish facilitating our meeting, chairing our meeting. One of the things I just want to appreciate in this work is two of the concepts you raised. The first is being really having some agreed upon principles that you're working from. I think that agreed upon principles can give you places where if there is some conflict or competing ideas, that you can pause and take a step back and think about how those principles can inform the work. And then I also appreciate the emphasis on displacement and hearing that there is that this project is embedding some anti-displacement work from the beginning. So really have appreciated the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any questions. So thanks, Sam, for the presentation again. And surely we'll like to have you back as the project moves forward and there's more uh, firm details and information about the routes, etc. So looking forward to see you in the near future with updates to the Blue Line project. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Gonzalez, and I'm happy to come back and thank you for your time tonight. Much appreciated.
Thanks. Okay. Um, so moving on, and the next item of the agenda is that we will like to hear some updates from council members, updates from the various standing committees in which we are members. Um, Let me just start by saying that I've been out for several months due to a medical issue. So I've been unable to follow up or participate on my assigned committees of management and transportation until last week. So I will ask Council Member Lee if he has any updates on the management and community development committee. I don't think that Council Member Sterner is here. So Chai, this is your show if you have any information to share with us.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. So my management committee meetings, they happen quite often. So I wasn't prepared to talk about management in particular. But I remember recently there were I think the last meeting I think we approved a few um, formal things like adjusting fundings to um, the Southwest uh, line, some Cobra procurement. Um, And then for the community development, as Brianne kind of alluded to earlier, the big thing right now before our plate is the housing choice vouchers. And so we have to, as a PHA, under federal laws, we have to approve an annual plan. And right now, the Metro HRA, we have about almost 8,000 housing choice vouchers, of which 970 are project-based vouchers, which is about 14%, and HUD gives us the discretion to go up to about 20%. And so the big kind of debate for us is um, what kind of numbers might we set the PBVs at? And so as Brianna alluded to, we are in the middle of an open comment period. Had a public hearing last night um, at the CDC, and the public comment period ends at the end of this month. So folks have 2 more weeks, and then um, this issue will come before it will come back to the CDC September 7th, which is the day after Labor Day, and then it will come before the full council um, 2 weeks after that. So in mid September, this plan will come before the full council. And so if folks in the committee, in community have people who are passionate about and want to advocate about on this issue, please um, let me drop the link to the public hearing comment here onto the chat for folks who can see the chat. Um, and so that gives you the schedule and the contact numbers and emails to share your input. And so as far as the CDC goes, that's the big thing before us right now.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. It's very important for the folks who are interested in housing issues, and we do take those public comments into consideration. So definitely, we will, or the committee will read them and take them into account as process moves forward. Any questions or any additional comments regarding any of the standing committees of the council? No? Okay. So we're getting to the end of the agenda for tonight, and we still have some time left. Um, but let me just follow the agenda, and then we might open this for any additional or last comments or questions or um, suggestions that the members would like to make. So the announcement that I have is that the standing committee is continuing to meet virtually via WebEx meetings. Our next standing committee meeting is Tuesday, August 24th, um, from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. And again, the participation in the standing committee is critical for guiding the agenda of future meetings and topics for discussions and focus for the committee. So it's at the standing committee um, meetings that we discuss what to include in the agenda, what to bring before the full EAC. So please feel free to, actually, we encourage you to attend those. It's open to anyone, any of the members to come in and share your thoughts of issues that we should be discussing, um, ideas of how to improve the workings of the EAC, everything and anything that you think is relevant. Please bring those to the standing committee for our consideration and perhaps inclusion into our future discussions at the full EAC. And before adjourning, I'm just going to open the floor for any last comments, ideas, suggestions, anything that the folks here would like to share with the rest of us. And I see Anita raising her hand.
Thank you. Um,
Yeah,
I just, I'm participating in an Upper Harbor Terminal in North Minneapolis in an environmental justice advisory discussion. And some of the things that have come up is affordable housing. So if you've been keeping, on tap of what's going on in North Minneapolis at the Upper Harbor Terminal over there on 94 Washington and Dowling, they're going to be building some housing, and the discussion comes up about affordable housing. So I thought it would be advantageous for the Met Council Equity Advisory Housing Committee to participate in that. And also, we're talking about transportation and public access to and from, and also environment. So I'm looking at the two council members to somehow be involved in those discussions, or if I have some questions in the future, how the Met Council can be actively involved in the Upper Harbor Terminal and some of that creation and what's ongoing in the community.
excellent. And if folks have more questions about these meetings, who's organizing them, etc., should they contact you or do you have a
I'll,
website?
yeah, they can contact me, or I can come to the standing committee and we can put it on the agenda and then we can have a bigger discussion about it.
Oh, excellent. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Uh, Councilmember Lee?
Thanks, Francisco. I On Friday, this past Friday evening, I had the pleasure to be invited to Dakota County by our Congresswoman Angie Craig, to join with Congressman uh, Peter Meyer from Michigan, and they're doing a tour of Angie's congressional district, and it was to talk about the infrastructure bill that the Senate just passed. And we had a great town hall with the Dakota County officials as well as the chamber, and it was a good reminder that a lot of the work that we do intersects at all levels of government. So I encourage folks on the committee to remind each other that the important work of infrastructure is not just about rail and roads and bridges and broadband, but because it's so important and so critical to our built environment, that you remain plugged into and continue to maintain relationships with your local officials and county officials to continue these important discussions. As we know, this bill has passed the U.S. Senate, but they have to kind of um, reconcile it out of the House, and so it's important to be involved in the process to ensure that we all get to get some equitable delivery out of whatever the final outlook is for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and that's an important opportunity now that we have with all those funds that were just most likely are going to be approved in some way of or fashion in the next month or so, right? I think that's the hope that both the full Congress is going to approve the thing, and that will be additional resources that we may be able to tap on to address some of the housing as well as infrastructure issues. So thank you for that. Let's see, any other comments, ideas? If you want to talk about things that are happening at your day jobs that are related to equity or to the work of the EAC or the Met Council as a whole, also feel free to do that. I think that we're missing a lot of opportunities of network about what we do during our day jobs. That might be opportunities for us to collaborate or bring to the full EAC. So again, feel free to share those ideas or updates if you have any. Well, I don't have any since I've been on medical leave, but anyone else have any comments or suggestions or updates? Okay. Well, seeing none, this concludes our agenda for tonight. So at this point, I will adjourn this meeting. So thank you very much for your participation tonight, and we have the rest of the evening available to you. So since we finished a little bit early, so thank you again for your participation, and hopefully we'll see you at the standing committee meeting, or if not, at the next meeting next month. Thank you, and good night.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Good night.